I'm Christine Lilly. I work for Frontier Agriculture. I'm actually based near Lincoln. I provide the technical link between the trials and the agronomy teams, and I provide some of the technical support to the agronomists. We're here today at the Wanstead site, which is near Peterborough. This site we've got winter wheat, winter barley, oilseed rape. So we're in a field of winter wheat, and we're just looking at the growth stage at the moment. And the crop is not quite at growth stage 30 yet, which is probably about where we'd expect a crop that was drilled on the 10th of October, as this one was, to be. So I've pulled up a plant, and I've chosen the main tiller, and I'll just slice it open carefully at the bottom. And you see there's the ear. It's still very small, and you see this crop's not really get close to growth stage 30 yet. Growth stage 30 is when the measurement from the sort of base of the plant to the tip of the ear would be 1 centimetre. You can see that this crop has not really even started to move into that stage yet, so it's still really at the tillering stage. So we're just looking in some of the varieties in the trial, and just to see what disease levels there are. This is actually a variety called Reflection, which is a relatively new variety. It's taken up about 10% market share this year. We're just having a look to see what disease is on there, and we can find some yellow rust and septoria, which is about what you'd expect at this time of year. The levels of yellow rust have actually dropped down quite considerably to where they were a few weeks ago, when we could find it quite readily in about 30 of the 40 varieties at the site. The recent sort of colder weather has just slowed it down a little bit. I think now that the levels of particularly the rust have just dropped, then I don't think there's a requirement particularly to put anything on at the moment. It's really now waiting until the sort of true T0 timing, which will probably be around about the end of the month, and then it's looking at probably a triazole and a chlorthalonil mix, and then that will control any yellow rust and any septoria. If the mildew starts to develop, which it can do, there's 1 or 2 quite susceptible varieties, so for example Leeds, then it may well be worthwhile putting a mildewicide in at the same time. If you haven't already put your first dose of nitrogen on, then now is the time to get that completed. These trials were recently had the first dose of nitrogen applied last week, and I think just a small dose, maybe 40-50 kilos of N, is sufficient. It's just enough really just to get the crop started and growing away, and then start to follow up with your second and third doses in a few weeks' time when you start to get to your main application timings. For the total dose of nitrogen, it's probably not that different to where you might be normally. It's been a mild winter, so there's probably been a bit more mineralisation, but then to contrast with that, we've had some heavier rainfall, higher rainfall in parts of the country. So I think in terms of your actual nitrogen doses, we're probably not that different to where you may have been in the past. If you feel that you need to put sulphur on, and now there's plenty of trial results and evidence to suggest that most fields probably do need an application of sulphur, it's important to get that on, certainly some of it within that first application timing. So we're just looking in some of the plots where we've been doing some herbicide comparisons, particularly looking at blackgrass control. And you can see here in this plot here has had no herbicides at all, and you can see there's quite a lot of blackgrass in the crop itself. It's now starting to tiller out quite nicely, so we're going to get a fairly reasonable population of blackgrass at the site. There's obviously less options in the spring to what you could do to control blackgrass, particularly when it's got to this sort of size. Products like Atlantis and Pacifica, they're probably now, if you're wanting to apply those, then now is the time to get them on. So we've moved to look at one of the plots where we've applied some Avedex granules in the autumn, and you can see that generally the level of blackgrass control has been quite good, although it's not complete. You can still see here that we've got 3 or 4 blackgrass plants here, but I think just putting Avedex on its own is clearly not enough. So we're just going to walk up to the winter barley plots and just have a look at one of the varieties and just look at what growth stage and what's actually in the crop. I'll just pull one of the plants up, just have a look. It's obviously quite well tillered. You can see there's quite a sort of significant number of tillers on there. We've got 5 or 6 tillers actually on that plant. Although we've got quite a lot of varieties here, and they all look quite different. Some of them visually looking much more forwards. when we cut them open, they're all around about the same growth stage still at the moment. So I'm just going to open the crop up and have a look, see what diseases we've got in the winter barley. So if we just look down there, there's some quite good brown rust. You can see the brown pustules starting to develop quite nicely on that leaf. That's at quite high levels really on there, and also there's probably a bit of old mildew just in there as well. Some of the other varieties have got much more active levels of mildew. Clearly there's some reasonable levels of disease now developing, and it may be an opportunity that a pre-T0 fungicide might be beneficial. We've seen some benefits in the last couple of seasons from pre-T0s, particularly with brown rust, maybe something like a morpholine just to knock that down. And then as we move forward into our sort of true T1 timing, then you need to bring some prothioconazole into the programme, which will give good control of the rhynchosporium and net blotch, and then maybe add in some SDHI chemistry and even some strobel urine as well. The other area to look at, particularly with winter barleys, is manganese. We're starting to see some quite visual symptoms of manganese deficiency, certainly showing up within the last couple of weeks. So I think if you haven't put any manganese onto crops, particularly where you know there's a known deficiency, then it's important to actually get on there quite soon and start getting that manganese on. And it may well need some multiple applications to get some of the crops turned around from where they are at the moment. So we're in the field of oilseed rape. This is actually a reasonably advanced crop. Some of the most forward plants in here are now just starting to sort of get just close to the yellow bud stage. Around the country there are some big variations in terms of what crops look like. There's some crops that are very small, still sort of barely moving into the stem extension stage, and I've seen one or two crops in the last week now where they're just starting to haze over, get that yellow look sort of, and probably won't be too long before they start to move into the flowering stage. So at the actual growth stage of the plants within the field are actually quite variable. We've got this smaller one down here which is just at the sort of green bud stage, but actually only sort of 6 or 8 inches tall, and then you move up to this one here which is just starting to almost move into that sort of yellow bud stage. You can just start to see a tinge of yellow on there, so quite big variations actually within the field itself. But I think what will happen as we move over the next few weeks, they will start to even up and they will start to branch out as the crop starts to grow and develop. So in terms of disease in the oilseed rape, light leaf spot is probably the predominant disease. There's not a huge amount in this particular crop, but certainly in parts of the country we are seeing quite high levels of it, particularly on some of the more susceptible varieties. A lot depends on when the last fungicide was applied, and I think if anybody hasn't applied a fungicide this spring, then it's important now to get something onto the crop. And that may well just be a fungicide, or it may be one of the products that has got a sort of more of a PGR activity, particularly if you're wanting to actually influence the crop canopy itself, then you might want to be looking at more of a type of product with PGR activity. Just one word of warning though, if you've got crops that are quite stressed or quite a little bit backward, then you probably want to avoid products with too much PGR activity in them, because we have seen some negative effects on yield where they've been applied in situations where they were not necessarily needed. The next pest issue that's likely to appear in oilseed rape is pollen beetle. We're not finding any here today because it's just too cold for them, but what you want to look out for is the little black beetles, and you'll find them on the top of the plant. And if you want to find out how many on the plant, if you just tap it, and if there's any in there, they'll drop out onto your hands. But so it's really looking at finding the pests. You need some quite high numbers to justify treatment, because it's remarkable how well the oilseed rape plant can actually recover.